What is a random variable? So we started a class talking about variables, talking about data sets, and we talked about how we organize them with variables going across in the columns, and we have cases, observations going down in the rows. So we talked about how we have variables, different types of information that we're interested in. We then talked about different things we can do with the data. We can categorize it. We have categorical variables. We have quantitative variables. We can do different analysis of these different types of variables. We can make charts. We can make tables. We can provide hopefully useful information to people making decisions. Well, we then turn to the chapter 5 material dealing with probabilities, right? And so we started talking about randomness, about unknown outcomes, and how to start thinking about how likely things are to happen, even if we don't know what exactly will happen. Well, now we put those two sort of ideas together. We find out that probability theory is actually a foundation for what we were talking about way back at the very beginning when we were talking about variables. This all comes together in random variables. So a random variable is a variable, a type of information that contains a random element. We don't know what values it will take. So it can take multiple different values. We don't know which values it will take, but we may know something about how likely different possible values are. If you think about it, this is a lot of phenomena in the world that we live in. How long is the stay-at-home order for COVID-19 going to be in place? It could be 7 days, or 14 days, or 30 days, or 100 days. We don't know, right? There are different values that variable, how many more days of stay-at-home order in our state do we have? And we don't know what the outcome is, so it's a random variable. Now, we may have some mechanism of assigning probabilities. How likely are different possible values? How likely are they to happen? And maybe having 300 more days of stay-at-home order is really unlikely. So that's a really small probability event. And maybe it's a really small probability that the stay-at-home order will be lifted tomorrow after 1 day. So that distribution would be something that looks like, well, it's got low values for really small numbers because the stay-at-home order isn't going to be lifted in the next couple days. It's very unlikely to be. It's very unlikely to last a year or a very long time. So those are low probability events. So most of the probability for that sort of random variable, it's most likely to have some intermediate value. So we could actually draw a distribution of how likely that is to happen. So random variables are going to be really important going forward. Ways for us to think about the data that we get from the world is actually, those are samples, realizations of values that a random variable has taken. Thinking about it that way will help us analyze it, think about where the data are coming from, what tools we should use to analyze them, and how much we should put on the conclusions that we get from that analysis, because it all depends on how we think about that data generating process.